Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Welcome to Rauta. This time we have a release that's not very typical for a couple of reasons. First again, as many of you know, split releases are more things of the past, and as much as I like them as release format and all that stuff, it seems like these kind of releases are not that common anymore, and as such, it seems to be the kind of a format that is going to pave the way for other kind of releases. The other reason why this is particularly interesting is that it features an old Polish black metal band Graveland, as well as one of the newcomers from Finland called Commander Agares. Now, that being said, however, both of these um, guys operating the band, being the masterminds, primus motor of the bands, are actually long-time veterans. So make no mistake, even if the other band is kind of a new, these guys have been here for decades. So, what do we really think of kind of a release which features Graveland having massive discography? I mean, this takes hours and hours of time to go through, and then we have Commander Agaris, which so far has only one full album out, and then this split called Awakening of the Storms. Now, because it would go out of the scope of this review, I'm not gonna recap the whole history for you when it comes to the different bands. Let's just say that whereas Graveland started as a Roish pagan black metal band, as you probably know, the past 10, 20 years, more like 20 years, I guess, the band has been more on the atmospheric side of things, and it's not really catering to the needs and tastes of people doing that kind of a raw end of black metal. So this is definitely the modern take of Graveland, whereas Commander Agares is more like kind of a question mark, like how we would define the band that hasn't even been out there for quite some time, but that is part of the charm with this kind of releases. You have a something very old, or let's put it this way, something some kind of music from a band that has been there out for eternity, and then we have something very, very new. So it's not really like one of those split releases which would feature two really old bands, kind of like coming into collision with one another, or two newer bands, which is so often the case with split releases. Anyway, be it as it may, this one features a nice piece of cover art. Unfortunately, I don't have the CD for unpacking purposes here. It's left in home in Finland, and I'm not there just yet, not before the Steelfest. But take a look. I mean, this is kind of like taking me back to the 90s. Not exactly the most beautiful art out there, but totally something that I can enjoy. There's just kind of a warrior theme and kind of a Nordic feeling, or kind of cold feeling, with these mountains and all these, you know, warlike themes. And as such, it totally, kind of gets the Graveland vibe. Now, I cannot really say what would be the Commander Agaris vibe, so I'm not just gonna comment it. But it is may. I mean, the cover art is very, very fitting for this kind of music. And so the question is, what kind of music we're talking about? Well, like I said, Graveland is definitely here showcasing the later era Graveland, which is more atmospheric, kind of a pagan metal rather than this raw end of black metal. And those who have been listening to Graveland past few years probably know instantaneously like what's going on here with the three tracks and all that stuff. Now, I wouldn't say this is the best nor worst of Graveland, but really rather solid take on that stuff. So kind of atmospheric, not so much synth-driven as some of the parts which are definitely leaning to Graveland's side project, Lord Wind. But it's very, very kind of a basic Graveland in so many ways. I mean, you can kind of instantly recognize it's Graveland, both good and bad. And as such, it means the production is never like too good or too polished, but it's not also the kind of a raw end of stuff anyway. So it's kind of in the middle, not really the big band, stuff, like, I mean, like really big bands, be it Iron Maidens or Metallicas or Rammsteins or whatever, but somewhere in the middle between the super produced and more like homemade poor ass recordings. So very fitting overall for Graveland. And when it comes to the music, well, the songwriting is, like I said, pretty solid, but there are no highlight moments. The kind of a stuff that, especially me, being an old Graveland fan, would be like, yes, this is the stuff that takes me back. I'm more saying this is more about built on the atmospheric parts rather than individual riffs or patterns, which are the kind of a hit material, if you will. I know it kind of sounds a little bit wrong and odd to say about Graveland, but I mean, when you go to older Graveland stuff, be it Celtic Winter or Thousand Swords or whatever, you kind of know instantly what I'm talking about. Now, then again, when this album kind of moves on and spins to the Commander Agaris side, which is supposed to be, by the way, side A and B, respectively, which makes a lot of sense. Things basically go on the same level, but Commander Agaris is more about 1990s synth-driven black metal, not like one of those super melodic or super symphonic. So we're not exactly talking about some kind of emperor thing going on here, but one could say it has a little bit of hint towards bands such Limbonic Art, for instance. Not as chaotic and all over the place, but more focused. But definitely the kind of not overly produced guitar sound and the drums and vocals and just the overall mixing is kind of a takes me back. The kind of a 1990s, especially the early years or early to mid 90s kind of a feeling is very, very much present. And coming from that territory, I mean, those were my teenage years. It's definitely like a good thing. Now, people who are more leaning towards nowadays black metal, either being outright third wave of black metal or late second wave. Sometimes it's kind of hard to just put your finger like this is that and that era. But I hope you know what I'm talking about. If not, you're beyond help anyway. This is definitely taking to the early years of the 90s or the mid parts. And I think it's a good thing. It kind of showcases what we're talking about here when we're talking about veteran black metal people, those who have been there for decades now, not just somebody who jumped onto the bandwagon, say, past 5 years. And as such, these two are quite fitting. They're not like copycats of one another, but they definitely fit together quite nicely. Actually, way better than what I was expecting. I can't really say what I was totally expecting, but it's better than that. And if I had to pick winner here, because I love always this kind of a competition kind of a thing to kind of you're contending here, I would say Commander Agaris, to my surprise, is tiny bit amount better than a Graveland, which comes to my surprise because I mean, being an old Graveland fan and all, and Commander Agaris is the so-called black horse here. Nobody's expecting it to go to the kind of a challenge and beat the old man in the game. Now, overall, these are, however, quite well balanced. So it's not like the competition is like unfair or something. It's more like if you're gonna like one of the bands, you're probably gonna like both of the bands. That being said, however, this is not for everybody. Partially because this is not very polished in terms of production, nor it's not very violent or aggressive in terms of music. So those who are looking for, I don't know, some kind of a Marduk experience or some kind of a super dark, evil sounding black metal, be it modern or old times, might find these too atmospheric for their likes. However, being a little bit aggressive side are the vocals of Commander Agares. They're kind of a screamier rather than a raspier style, and I think they fit here well. So overall, it's pretty interesting, really, is overall. And I would say this is something we're checking out. Not the best out there last year, but definitely on the better side of things. Things being said, and these things being said, go check it out. It's been out since May 2022. Just came a little bit late to the review last year, but like the saying goes, good music never gets old. So what are you waiting for? Go check out the songs, and I hope you like it. Links are provided in the description box, and you can or you should be able to find it on your favorite streaming services. So click and listen and buy if you like. Bye bye.